Izuku Shigaraki by Fangirl48 on AO3. Chapter 18 Before You Fall into Hell. Afterwards, Inko started coming around more and more. Izuku smiled sadly. She and Hisashi worked for the rest of their schooling together, hammering out numerous laws and policy changes. She sounds like quite the woman, Tsukuichi remarked, having only a rudimental knowledge of how long something like those could take. Oh, and she was. Izuku nodded. It had taken him longer to warm up to the woman than his brothers, but once he started to get to know her better, Inko became she became his closest confidence. 4 years of putting up with Hisashi made Inko a force of nature. Before even graduating, she started making news, had a bunch of offers from big companies looking to hire her. Toshinori watched out of the corner of his eye as Grant Torino suddenly stopped. He had been walking along the row of headstones just a little away from the woman's gravesite. She turned every single one of them down. Izuku chuckled lightly, remembering the staggering numbers of offers that Inko had used to compare with his brother's own letters. Even Hisashi asked her to be our family lawyer, but Inko just smiled and told him that's not the right question. The right question? Go on a date with me, Izuku sighed, standing up and dusting the dirt off his knees. I guess somewhere along the way, they fell for each other. Hisashi, though being the dummy he was, didn't think Inko liked him romantically. Aizawa snorted. Working in high school, he had seen this exact scenario played out 100 times. Heck, he had even been one of those stupid teenagers with Hisashi. This is until Nomura and Tensei joined forces and locked the pair into a room together and didn't let them out until they admitted it. Who made the first move? Shota asked curiously. Izuku looked away from the statue for a moment. Inko, though Hisashi always swore it was him. Toshinori coughed lightly, wondering how, all for one, asked such a remarkable-sounding woman on a date. They met at a courthouse, and Hisashi asked if she wanted to get a cup of coffee to catch up. The barista there started flirting with Inko, who flirted back. Izuku recounted the story. She wanted to see if Hisashi really was interested in her, and, well, Hisashi being Hisashi, Izuku trailed off, leaving what happens next to everyone's imagination. The only thought the entire group had was that poor barista. Next thing me and Tomura knew, we were standing next to Hisashi in the courthouse, and Inko is walking, signing her name to the marriage certificate. The all-or-nothing user chuckled. Hisashi had wanted to do a huge ceremony and make whatever wedding fantasy Inko had a reality. Turns out, Inko wasn't one for making a big deal out of something, and preferred to use the money towards their honeymoon. She could never go get a coffee at that courthouse again, and soon after that oh God. Izuku suddenly paled and slapped his hand over his mouth, running towards one of the bushes, throwing up. Toshinori ran to Izuku's side, not sure what to do right now. Are you okay? Stupid question. Of course not. You don't have to tell us. We can sit. No! Izuku shouted, throwing his arm to the other side to create some distance, the tears the heroes had wanted to see now flowing from Izuku's eyes. Someone has to know. Shigaraki, Aizawa said, taking a step towards the boy, ready to use his quirk at the first sight of lightning. I came home one day and there was nothing. Nobody. No sound. I got a bad feeling, but I didn't call anyone, Izuku said, grabbing his hair tightly and pulling on it. I'm so stupid. Why Why didn't I call anyone? Grant Torino winced. He had been exploring the other headstones when Izuku's story began. After seeing the names on them, he now had more questions than answers. But they could wait. Izuku was caught up in his memories right now. As someone who had been a hero for longer than most of the others had been alive, he had seen his fair share of trauma. One wrong move or word, and this wouldn't end well for any of them. So, Tsuruhiko did the intelligent thing and hung back, letting Toshinori and Aizawa handle the teenager. I searched the house. No one was there. I made my way to Midoriya's house and Izuku turned and threw up again, images hitting him all at once. The phantom smell of blood assaulting his nostrils. The blood, there was so much of it. I walked inside and she, Rin, with large nails through her hands and head keeping her in front of the stove. Gohaku, his throat slit and tipped back with paper in his hands. Each of the other staff members posted in some grotesque parody of an everyday task. There was a noise. Inko was lying on the floor. She had been shot. I didn't even hear a gunshot. There was so much blood. Izuku, looking at his hands, warm blood flashed for a second. Izuku thinks that he had tried to stop the bleeding. He remembers Inko asking him to take her power and give it to Hitoshi, telling him, "Get me Mikuru and run," Izuku whispered, collapsing to the ground. One hand reached behind to his back, hovering over a long-healed scar, remembering the stabbing of pain. He had looked towards the crib, where his nephew stood crying for him before. She shot him! He was only 3, and she shot him! Hisashi was still sleeping when his beautiful dreams turned to nightmares. Suddenly, he was transported to things he would rather have forgotten. Hisashi had just finished up a meeting with the Prime Minister when his secretary came running in up to them, barely able to speak. Instantly, Hisashi knew something was wrong and excused himself, his chauffeur already waiting for him in the front of the building. Flashing lights and microphones bombarded the rising politician before he even stepped out of the car. When Hisashi had finally been able to push past the vultures that called themselves the media, he was greeted with the grimmest face of the police. Demanding to know what had happened, one of the uniformed officers had led him inside. Ritomura was sitting on the stair, paler than he had ever seen him before. The middle brother had looked up to Hitoshi with rimmed eyes, and he knew. Hisashi wasn't sure how, but he just knew that the thing he had been dreading for so many years had finally happened. She had come back, the woman who went by the nickname the cleaner amongst anti-ability movements. And there was Tomura, sitting at the staircase, all alone. No Inko comforting him, no Izuku holding Mikuru. All the staff that should have been hovering in the background, absent. Hisashi's legs had given out in understanding, and he screamed, beating his hands against the floor till they bled, and he begged Tomura to tell him it wasn't true when the younger brother tried to comfort him. He cried louder when he saw Inko's limp hand fall out from underneath a white sheet, the wedding ring she loved so much glittering cruelly from the flash bloods. Vomited when a small body was brought out, knowing that his son, his beautiful Mikuru, was gone forever. Izuku had been loaded into an ambulance, stabbed in the back and left for dead inches from the gruesome discovery The police had made it to the crib. Judging from the wound, the paramedics and doctors were worried that the youngest brother wouldn't survive the night. Through it all, something dark began to root and grow inside Hisashi's heart. All the fighting his family had done to help people hadn't been enough to save them. This was the first time, sitting there on that hospital bench, that a particular memory hit Hitoshi. You know, Inko smiled, laying in his arms one night, the moonlight from the window giving her an eternal glow. I've heard some people had started giving themselves nicknames, something that fit with their abilities. I think we should do the same. Oh, really? Hisashi said, looking at his wife's shoulder, giving her a kiss. Then yours should definitely have the word queen in it. Or maybe goddess? With you, I'm never sure which one fits you better. Inko snorted. I was actually thinking of something I saw in the library. In that book your grandfather brought back from France? Go on. I want to be all for one, Inko spoke, sitting up with an excited smile on her face. All of those people out there who need help, they come to me looking for it. All for one, Hitoshi repeated, the taste of it smooth on his tongue. It's perfect for you. And you, Inko continued, should be one for all. After all, you're one person who tries to help everyone. All for one and one for all, Hisashi chuckled, remembering grandfather reading him the book the phrase had come from when he was small. It hadn't been long until he retired that he saw what a spoiled woman his daughter had become and tried to be better with his grandsons. Together forever. Inko smiled and snuggled back into her husband's arms. Together forever. Forever, it seemed, was a very short time. As the weeks passed, the Shigaraki family grieved, and the hatred in Hisoshi's heart grew deeper every time he looked into Izuku's empty eyes. What Izuku had gone through in that house had broke him, and not being able to save anyone had rendered him mute. There were times when he would grab Hisoshi's sleeve and open his mouth to try to say something, but nothing would come out, no matter how much he tried. Tomura tried his best to help his brothers, but the combination of it all, trying to run their school and his own grief, weighed heavily on the middle brother's health. Then, Izuku was killed, or so he thought at the time. The clinic, where he took his physical therapy, blew up not long after Izuku had entered. It was clear to Hisashi just who the target was. So, he made the group responsible pay for it with their lives. Things quickly progressed after that. Tomura found his brother's paranoia ever growing, spiraling out of control. No matter how many quirks he stole or people joined him, it was never enough. Tomura tried talking to Hisashi about his brother's actions as they grew more and more extreme. Burning the buildings, where record housing information on everyone with quirks had been the final straw, especially when it took several other recordings. Keeping buildings with it earned the nickname the Great Fire. Tomura had finally had enough of trying to leave, only to find himself locked away in what appeared to be an old bank vault. Hisashi, standing on the other side of the door, telling him he would understand soon enough. The stockpile quirk was originally just supposed to collect the sun's energy and store it within Tomura's body, strengthening it. The middle Shigaraki's health had grown so bad Hisashi was afraid he would soon be left alone. How was he supposed to know that Tomura had a quirk that would merge with it? Hisashi had never used his own powers on his brothers before. It wasn't until he found the bowl empty one day that he quickly realized that Tomura had gained his own small group of followers. People from within his own organizations did not agree with anymore with what he was doing. They had banded together and taken his brother from him, so Hisashi went to work finding them. There had been so many close calls over the couple of years. Sometimes Hisashi got close to Tomura, only for the man to slip away. Other times, they would glimpse each other only for a brief moment. Their last meeting, the one before Tomura fell to a stray bullet from the two groups clashing, he found Hisashi sitting atop a pile of corpses. The man was humming an old lullaby, the same song they had sung to Izuku and Mikuru when they were younger, and he sat there amongst the sea of carnage that had once been a high-ranking member of the cleaner mafia. Hisashi had looked up at Tomura. His white hair was now strained a bright red, a sincere smile on his face when he dropped the woman's severed head. Tomura gulped and looked at his brother fearfully. "Who are you now, brother?" Hisashi laughed, raising his foot and stomping on the head, showering the skull instantly. "She told me forever together, you know?" Hisashi smiled again. Not as sincere this time. No, this one was full of cruelty and malice, and he started to laugh louder. The severed head, now a bloody mess under his feet. "And now she's gone. But she did leave me with something to remember her by." Standing up amongst the corpses, the last of Hisashi Shigaraki allowed itself to be dragged under an ocean of darkness. The man's bloody hands reached up and silked back his hair before he gave a formal bow. "Greetings, my beloved brother. You may call me All for One." Oh my god, that was an emotional... Okay, so what I'm getting at is that Midoriya's mom came back, and Izuku literally saw that whole gruesome scene, saw his nephew die in front of him, and then got stabbed in the back himself, literally almost killing him. Luckily, obviously, he didn't die, but slumber, hashtag sleeping beauty. The story about All for One and how he once did have a heart, but literally, quite literally, after getting almost everything but his one brother taken away from him, he kind of just cracked. And that is a sad, tragic story. And you know what? It humanizes Hisashi a lot. It does. It really does. It humanizes him a lot, and you empathize with him a bit. And I'm sitting here, I was like, yep, I empathize with this man. Unfortunately, I empathize with this little hole. And I'm sitting here, I'm just like, god damn it, I can't hate him as much anymore. At least in this fanfic. I still very much hate him in the anime. Especially after certain manga events. I swear to god. Anyways, but yeah, that was emotional, wasn't it, guys? How are we feeling? How are we feeling? Are the therapists gonna, be told about this one? As always, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds, have a wonderful day or night. Join our community Discord server, link is in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.